Well, thanks everybody
And
for stopping
the
in.
camera. Yeah.
But everything looks good. Looks like it's popping up. If you can't tell by the title and or the giant head I have in the middle of the screen, we're gonna talk about Last of Us 2. Anxiously awaited game by
Spoilers.
both Tinkro and spoiler heavy. Keep that in mind. So anybody that has not played this game, or if you don't care, I mean, I'm fine with you staying. It's not very often that you tell viewers to leave, but if you haven't beat this game, leave.
Yeah, you can leave and come back later.
Yeah.
After you beat it.
Yeah, come
And
back.
then-
And this will be posted on YouTube as well. And I'll have that up. I'll have a little intro as well, so on my personal YouTube, which I believe is linked in my Twitch profile, so you can go down there and subscribe, and we'll have some news here. We'll have a new channel coming, so more news to come on that, where a few of us some good content that'll be able to come out, so that'll be a good time. But first, we'll talk about The Last of Us 2. So we're a little late to the party talking about this.
Yeah.
Because I take my sweet time playing games. Unlike Cronin here, who beat it in probably 2 days, I think.
Yeah, I didn't sleep, but it
2.5.
was worth it.
So, but I think this was probably both of our most anticipated game in a long time.
Yeah, primarily why I burned through it so quickly. And believe me, I took my time, but
I think, what did your hours end up being? What did your hours end up being to beat it?
I'd have to check again, but it was probably close to 30, which I think was the average play time.
Okay. Yeah, mine I think I ended up being like just under 29, like 28 and a half. So that sounds about right.
Yeah.
But
like 28 to 30 probably.
Yeah, but mine was split up. I just beat it like last week. So
Yeah.
and I had it launch day. But yeah, that happens. So
yeah, I did nothing else until I got to the end because I was so excited to get through that thing.
So we'll start the video without spoilers. Okay?
Yeah.
Just want to give a little background. So both of us are huge fans of the series. I think we bonded over the first one. I will make a statement, and Ward's Trav actually reminded me while we were playing Warzone one day. I still hold this statement to the day. So before I played it, I held true that after the first one ended, I did not believe they should make a second one. I thought it should stand alone and it should be by itself because it was one of the best video game endings I have ever experienced.
Right.
Movie too. And there have been movies that have ended similarly that I've been like, never make another one. This is perfect. Like, just stop. Like, you're going to make a second one and you're going to ruin it. So I was a little worried when Last of Us 2 came out, but I was so excited. Like, as soon as I was able to pre-order, I pre-ordered. Yeah. I did an unboxing of the collector's edition, which was right here behind me. But that was my preface. And as you know, Cronin here sped through the game in a day and a half. And it did not speed run through it, but like just beat it very quickly because he was so excited. I think pretty sure he Cartmaned it and you had a bucket or you went to the bathroom underneath you.
Yeah, man, I was just had no what happened in this story, so that's I barely took time to eat, I think.
So
but that's okay.
My wife's in the background now turning lights on. Hey. Anyway, so just to start things off, spoiler free, and or as much as we can as possible, give our initial thoughts on it. So, what our expectations were going in, were our expectations met, and kind of what your overall thought of the game was as a whole. So you go ahead and start, Colonel. What was your initial expectations going in? What was your thought? Like, as you're booting the game up, what were you expecting?
Oh man, as I'm booting the game up, what was I expecting? I don't even know that. Honestly, I think I tried to come into this with no expectations. Like even like with like I know you in the past you mentioned like the leaks and stuff before
Mhm.
that, but I was like, if the second one was coming out, I didn't want to know anything because I love the experience of everything, especially with
Mhm.
the first one. Like I was so satisfied with the first one, Last of Us One, that like I just wanted Last of Us 1 2.0. And I mean
Mhm.
that's probably across the board with any Last of Us fan. Um
Yep, I can
so
concur.
that's what I was yeah, so that's what I was hoping. That was I was that was my, if I had to have any expectations, that's what it would be. I didn't want to know like I was trying to be spoiler free as much as possible, even
Mhm.
like leading up to it. And even like whenever it came out, like, muted on social and all that other stuff.
Yep.
So the title screen comes on, and I mean, it's just kind of the same kind of feeling that you got whenever Last of Us 1 came out, right?
Mhm.
You're staring at the window in Last of Us 1 and Last of Us 2, you're staring at the boat and the pier, and it has some resemblance in the story of like what that is. And the whole time I'm thinking like, where is this going? Like with this boat. Not that that really matters, but um I don't know, I was so hyped and I was so like on a high that I got to experience another time in the world of The Last of Us that I was just there to experience it, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. My expectations were high for sure. Um
And I think with any AAA, especially like those of us I would say as PlayStation fans like have come to expect a specific quality from first party studios. So from Santa Monica for God of War, we have a standard that as soon as we buy a new God of War, like we kind of expect it, what it's going to be. Um, Obviously, maybe not as like it ended up much better than what my expectations were, but you kind of get my drift, right? So like, especially first party titles, you look at the quality across the board, and with Naughty Dog being like Sony's top dog, I guess, no pun intended, but like I think we all expected a lot from this game. Um,
well, and in particular because it was Last of Us, right?
yeah.
Like Last of Us 1 itself set the bar high
Mm-hmm.
for anything else that came out of that franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like its own contender in a way.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it especially I think because it was so different from anything Naughty Dog had done previously, right? So I love Uncharted, but it's very different from Last of Us. It's a very different feel, a very different speed. Last of Us is very slow. Uncharted is very up pace action movie oriented, right? So um, I think it kind of set a precedent that hey, Last of Us is going to be this Oscar-worthy movie that you're going to go watch and just experience this cinema. Whereas Uncharted, this is our Transformers, Avengers summer blockbuster kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So my
Yeah.
expectations going in were kind of the same. I was hyped up. I thought the standard of this game has to be so high. It had been delayed multiple times for them to work on it. Um, my expectations were lowered slightly, which I expressed to you privately. I was pissed off that they said Factions was not coming, because I would argue that that's one of the best multiplayer experiences ever created. And it was so different and so unique and still had a huge player base, even all the way up until launch. They said they were going to have it, and then they said it wasn't. So I was upset. Game developers, future reference, don't overpromise. Look at No Man's Sky. Don't do what they did and promise the world. I get some things are going to get pushed off and things like that, but I think multiplayer is a pretty big experience. But and Naughty Dog knows what they're doing. They'll probably have an experience come out in a year or so. Probably PS5 launch exclusive. They'll be like, hey, guess what? Buy it. You get Factions. But besides that, my expectations are pretty high. So same thing. After you finish the game, do you feel like your expectations were met? Were they a little bit lower than what you thought going in, or was it even better than what you initially thought?
So I wouldn't say that they were better going. They weren't better than the initial how they were set. I think
Mm-hmm.
the thing for me was with this game because it was a different. Um, the storytelling was different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that probably had to do with the creative team,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. But I oh, the interesting thing for me was uh, I was kind of like my expectations were going from moment to moment in the game instead of like this is where they're at and then
Mm-hmm.
this is where I want them to be. It was just kind of like okay, well, Naughty Dog's breaking everything that I was thinking of, because I had just finished remastered in preparation for the game,
Mm-hmm.
and then as it was going on, it was like, okay, this is cool. Oh, this is a new piece of uh, new mechanically or new tech,
Yeah.
and then it was just constantly changing. So I was like, I didn't like, I was kind of on my toes the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
um, not knowing how long the game was, not but at the end of it, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I was pleased. I don't know. At the end of it, I was pretty happy with the experience that I got out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that breaks down for me. I don't know. I'm a complicated person, I think, but
I agree with you.
I
I
think
think the best way for me was my expectations were met, but in a completely different way than what I was thinking about at going in, right? Because in my mind, I had this like I don't want this game to be made in the first place, so they're gonna have to blow me away. And throughout the game, I was continuously like thrown off, and I thought the game ended like 3 different times. Like I thought, oh, this is it, and then there's more, and then oh, this is it, and then there's more. So like, I think at the end I was satisfied, kind of like what you were saying. But I think my expectations I had at the beginning were just completely different at the end. Like looking back on it, and I was like, okay, I kind of see why they did that. I really like that. I didn't like this, and I'm like, I'm happy. Like I'm no way, shape, or form regret my purchase by any means or playthrough. Uh, Now, obviously, during the game, we both mentioned it, but like it kind of changed throughout the game. So this game throws you on a bunch of loops, which we'll kind of get into towards the end when we talk about the story, which is more where the spoilers are going to happen. But kind of to
yeah,
start here, after our expectation stuff, I want to talk about one thing that really blew me away. And in your field of work, this is something you want to do, work on games and things like that, is talk about the environments and the technical achievements that they completed in this game. Because I'll tell you one thing, I don't know the first thing about special effects in movies, but I can appreciate some good CGI and special effects when it's done correctly. Same thing for this game. I know there's a crap ton of work that goes on into figuring out the physics of a rope, but that dumb rope throughout the game or power cable or whatever amazed me to no end. I was like, you freaking kidding me? They got the physics of this. I actually have to throw this over the fence and it's the right length and it doesn't magically stretch somewhere. Like, I was just blown away. I was like, this is phenomenal. It's not even in a cutscene, it's part of the game, which was just
man.
nuts.
So the first Absolutely. So the first experience we had with that was early in the game, right? And then the second time is whenever it actually clicked to me. Like the first time I was like, I'm in Last of Us, I'm just like going
Yeah.
through. And then so the second time you interact with the rope mechanics, we won't. I mean, we're still spoiler free
Mm-hmm.
so far, but I think most people who've been interested has seen the snapshot. It's where like you have the yellow cable, right?
Yep.
So that's where it really clicked. Oh man, these mechanics are amazing because you had to solve a puzzle with it, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, and then it clicked for me, especially with like my background and my interest of, you know, the knowing kind of like how this stuff works.
Mm-hmm.
I spent so long. before I even moved on from that puzzle, I spent so long just playing with the mechanics, testing it out, and just seeing what all they did with that I was blown
It
away.
was
Like
nuts.
a huge smile came across my face just because it was such a sweet like experience just messing with that.
I played that part
rope.
for
Like
probably a good 20 minutes. And even then, so I'm a big trophy hunter and collector's hunter, and so I search every nook and cranny of that dang game. And at the end, I'm like, I didn't get either of those trophies. And so like I immediately go on my computer and I'm like, okay, which ones did I miss? It's like I missed this one dang quarter or whatever, but you pick up cards throughout the game, are one of them. And I missed a few. Sue me. One of them was at that part. And I read how to get it, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I didn't even think you could do that. So for anyone, here's a helpful tip. Through this, you're going to have to throw the rope over some stuff, or go around, or try and do whatever you will with it. Did you think to throw a power cable over a power line or a pole and climb up it? Because I didn't at that point in the game. Apparently, you can do that, and there's a card on top of a building, and the only way to get to it is to throw that dang power cable over a pole to climb up it, which is not even part of the game. It's just like, you can do it, so let's put it up there. Like,
right.
It's so cool. Like, and that's not a spoiler or anything, but like, you're still gonna have to figure it out if you go find it. But I'm just like, man, now I gotta go back and I'm gonna play with that dumb power cable again for 30 minutes trying to figure this out. But and that's not the only thing. I know I bring up the rope, but like that has to be super difficult as far as programming and designing like the physics of a power cable or a rope or whatever.
Yeah, so I know that I saw a tweet because I follow a lot of people at Naughty Dog anyway, but they're like this had to drive 15 people insane every day just working on this thing. Or no, it said make them cry is what it said. Made at least 15 different people cry every day, and then they confirmed it, which was hilarious. But yeah, so I mean, not only you have to set up the character, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you get a rig, which is basically building a puppet for the animation and stuff. But then you have to set up with the rope and the physics, right, to interact with it. But then like all the coding that goes into just the rope physics itself, I don't know, man. Like,
it's nuts.
I would love just to like look through that.
I saw there was a lead designer for like rope physics, and he's like, my whole job on this entire game was like making sure this rope or this power cable, like these physics work in whatever level that they're doing. And I was like, can you imagine spending 6 years of your life on a rope? Like,
yeah,
like that's crazy. And coming
from you know everything about a rope.
Yeah, like you had to research every little thing. You can imagine like his office, dude's got ropes hanging from poles all over the place. Like it had to be crazy. And coming from the previous games, like the rope especially or a grapple is like really used in previous games. So like with Uncharted 4, especially Uncharted Lost Legacy, it's used a lot. And you can see an improvement over the physics of that, of they're like, this is a tool that we can use and we have the groundwork, like let's blow it out of the water. And like Last of Us was just beautiful in that aspect. Like they took everything they learned and just cranked it up to 100 and said, you know, what else can we do? Like I like another one, I'll bring it up. So there's the fabric of shirts. I was kind of amazed because I'd never seen a game do that. So there's a part where a character is bruised and bloody and they take off their shirt over their head and you got the view from the back. And you could see every wrinkle and it pushes up against the skin like it looks like an actual piece of fabric that someone is taking off. And normally in games it never does that. Like it just looks like a block or it doesn't slide off the, correctly or whatever because they're doing this in game engine.
Usually pretty stiff.
Yeah, it's normally pretty stiff. There's not a lot of detail. And we all expect it, and that's why games normally don't have it, right? It's just Nathan Drake has his stock shirt half tucked in, and there's some fabric waving in there, but that's it. And even to the point where small details like that, I feel like this game went above and beyond.
Yeah, definitely. I know they did a lot of R&D on the muscle systems for this game, which usually, like I think we're so used to like games not caring to the level of detail that I think Naughty Dog went with this, right? So I think it's like I know they did a lot of R&D on like muscle systems on like the things that like don't really matter because you can appreciate them, especially if you're interested in that, just
Hmm.
because I mean I love that tech stuff and I'm really interested in it anyway, but like the little muscle movements that you see like whenever the characters move, or like how the dogs, you know, their movements and the stuff that's all happening underneath the skin, which you're not really close enough to certain, like you're not close enough to see some of those things sometimes, or at least it doesn't feel like it. But I
Hmm.
think at the same time it's so natural that your mind doesn't pick it out because it
Yeah.
is natural, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
And part of that was cloth, so I know they did a lot of like the R&D, like not only for the muscles for to get the skin to act appropriately, but also the clothing on top of
Hmm.
the
And it all
models and
works
stuff.
seamlessly. Like with whatever weather is going on, there's a lot of rain. I mean, even if you haven't gotten the game, you know this game takes place in Seattle. Like we've known that when they announced it, a lot of it. But um, whether it's snow, whether it's rain, whether it's sun, whether it's grass, it doesn't matter. Like everything works seamlessly to the point of like your character's breathing. Like if they're talking, they're breathing heavier when you start running or sprinting than you are crawling, or you lay down and someone gets closer, the breathing slows down, and almost like you have that same sense of fear, which is really cool. Um, and it's all compounded with I thought a fantastic AI system that they had, to the point where you have enemies that are attempting to flank you, and they're calling people out by name that you just shot. Like you just take a pickaxe to someone in the head, and they're just like, Daniel, no! Like it just start running at you, which is nuts. Like it makes you feel like I feel bad. I just took out this dude trying to kill me because clearly you're his friend. And even with animals, like dogs and stuff like that, like you feel even worse because they all have names and whatever. So,
Yeah.
um, but I thought the AI system was really, really good, which is something Naughty Dog I feel like has lacked on in previous games. Uncharted AI is normally not very good, easy to get around or accomplish even on harder settings. And even in the first game, I think a lot of that was just because it was on the PS3, it was more technical side. They just couldn't do it as well as they wanted to.
Sure.
Um, but that was like my one gripe with the very first game. I think my only gripe was the AI just really wasn't that good. Um,
Yeah.
to the point where like Ellie's following you in the first game, and she can be seen clearly by five guys, but they just ignore her.
They don't pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah, whereas in this one, if your companion gets seen, they get seen, or they do a better job at hiding, or they'll crawl under stuff, or they'll just shoot them first. Like it's more immersive, and I thought they did a really good job on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and especially like the combat AI. Like I found myself, maybe this just paints me as the kind of quality of a gamer that I am or whatever, but I found myself like always having to flip around the camera because I didn't know where anyone is at. I always
Yeah.
found myself getting flanked by the AI, which I thought was great, especially whenever you get, oh man. So I can't wait to get to the spoiler part of it because there's a certain part that I really want to talk about, but like um
We'll get there.
the
We'll
certain
get
group
there.
of enemies that they, yeah, just, oh, it's just, I know, I really, that's one of my bragging points. Like the expectations that I had for combat, it's not really something I think about when I think about Last of Us because of
Hmm.
such a narrative experience. But like,
Yep.
um, in Last of Us 2, like I just can't get over how good the combat felt in
Hmm.
this game.
Yeah,
The
it felt
it
fantastic,
just
and I think a lot of that had to
felt
do with
good.
game engine and what they had to work with and how well it all worked together was just. I mean, I thought it was awesome. Like it was just great. And we'll get into more a little bit later when we get into the spoiler. So, next, I kind of want to talk about mechanics. A lot of people that didn't like Last of Us 1, not so much for the story, but for the game itself, one of their biggest gripe was the mechanics of the game.
such as what, such as what?
Which are a little clunky. So this would be more movement of the character itself. It's a third person experience. How smooth you operate up against each other. The weapon system, how in depth that is. How easy is it to switch weapons or craft, or find stuff like that. And the first one was very minimal, and it was done that way on purpose because it's a post-apocalyptic world, right? But it was a little clunky, and I think that had more to do again with the PS3. What it could handle. You look at Rockstar games are extremely clunky to control, but they're great games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you feel like in this game it improved, or what did you like about this one? Whether it was the combat system as just you fighting, just the animation and the button presses and weapon selection, things like that, and then just movement. Did you enjoy it a lot better? Do you feel like it just didn't change at all, or what were your thoughts on that?
So I definitely had to play remastered to remember because I had such good memories of it. But playing it again, it definitely felt I could, especially playing factions, like I could feel the clunkiness of it.
It aged. It aged. Yeah.
But I think it's just, yeah, and I think it's definitely due to back then it probably didn't feel as clunky at the time, or maybe I don't know. I just love the game so much. But in this one, I definitely felt there was a lot more improved. I didn't feel so like rigid. I felt a lot more
smooth.
Everything felt a lot better. I think there was a lot more smoothness to it. I love some new mechanics that they put. Like I found myself prone a lot in this game, which I love that prone mechanic. I freaking, especially like there was one part where I hid underneath of a crate for like a long time while enemies were just like searching for you, and all you could see were just like their ankles, right? So like running around, and like I thought, I don't know, I really enjoyed the improvements that they made on moving and combat in particular, which I've
the combat was great, and I think a lot of that was the movement of your character. The combat, the AI was probably enhanced by really good level design and environments. Like everything was like the environments were absolutely gorgeous. And
absolutely,
the level design itself was much more open. It was a lot less linear than what the first game was. Here's a hallway. There's 2 rooms on either side. Fight your way or sneak through those 2 rooms, right? Whereas this one says, here's an open area. There's a gas station here, a bookstore here, a couple down cars. There's a old tunnel here. You can go under this truck. You can just fight them straight out. Whole scenarios, you can sneak completely around. There's 45 different ways to do this. Do it. And sometimes in games that can get a little overwhelming. But I thought they did a really good job of designing each experience and each, not necessarily level, but each encounter you would have with enemies or just areas of hey, there's different ways I can approach this, and the movement and the weapon system all matches, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I found myself too, and that was another thing. It like on the level design, which I thought was great. And so, like I said before, I was found myself flanked a lot. So I always, and because going back to what you said earlier about trying to collect everything, I definitely tried to do that on my playthrough. Right, I wasn't trying to rush through any level unless I felt like I didn't really have any other choice. And I only did that like once, maybe throughout the entire game, but I felt so confined by being flanked by the enemies. Maybe I moved too slow, or I didn't use cover enough. Maybe I was still playing Last of Us 1 style whenever Last of Us 2 kind of like you have to adjust to the new style of the new mechanics and stuff that you have. But after clearing the enemies of each section, I then found, like, it was kind of like I had tunnel vision. I was like, I know where these enemies are. Stay in this little area that I'm comfortable with to like kill these enemies, pick them off without being seen. And then I found all these different areas that you could go, or that you could. So then I found new ways that I could have approached enemies, or like, coerced them into going around this corner where I could have just like went through these bookshelves and got flanked him, and then took him out from behind or something like that. So like you said, there's like 45 different ways to approach the same problem, and like that in itself just feels so good. Yeah, it definitely feels more open.
Yeah. And I think the movement helped a lot with with combat, especially having a dodge where I can dodge and restrike. If you played Uncharted 4, like you're very very familiar with Naughty Dog's like counter system and things like that. I thought it was very smooth, a little clunky in the first game. They ironed all that out in this one. Like I thought it was great, like A+ as far as movement, things like that, how you interact with the environment when you're crouched up against a wall, like, you know, seeing yourself kind of hold up against it and look around. It didn't feel like I was glitching through corners or whatever, like a lot of games do, especially cover-based games. They did a really good job of like interacting with your environment, and that's everything from crawling through tall grass to underneath vehicles or getting up top and kind of getting the high ground on people, multiple story buildings, like a lot of depth in the environments that lended itself to, you know, the combat system and the movement. Also the combat system, not necessarily combat itself, but as far as the weapon system, I thought was greatly improved as far as how you upgrade your weapons. Using the workbench feature and the animations that come with that were phenomenal. Like it didn't break it didn't break an experience of, let me get in my backpack, I can see myself duct tape my barrel and now it's upgraded. You know what I mean? Like it was very much of, I'm gonna find a workbench, I'm gonna grab something, shave down the barrel, you know, that would actually work, and there's a whole animation to it for each individual item, weapon, each individual upgrade for that weapon, which was so cool. Like it was just so cool to see. So like the weapon system I thought was really upgraded. Your skills, it's all the same but better. I feel like your weapon tree, your skill tree, your crafting's all the same, but it's just better than the first. They just upgraded it but didn't change it, I guess.
Yeah.
Or health kits.
Yeah,
the
like skill tree. Right. Yeah. All as I agree with that. A lot of it. Yeah, it was a lot of the same, but better for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's not really a lot to say on there. So other than like all the animations, the individual unique stuff, like there wasn't really anything recycled in there. It was you collect these generic parts like you did in the first one to upgrade your weapons, but those generic parts. Oh, I chose to increase my range or the spread of my gun, so they're going to shave down the barrel, or they're going to like replace the stock or whatever. And it was just so cool to see this transformation of your gun the whole time.
It was awesome, and it didn't break. It didn't break the experience for me, like doing any of that. You know what I mean? Which was really cool. And Last of Us 1 was really good about that, as far as there's not a whole lot of crafting materials. You have to be smart with what you craft, with what you shoot with. In what scenario, just because you don't know if you're going to have any ammo left to finish the fight. You don't know how long this is going to be. Do you sneak it? Whatever. And they continued that with this one, which I thought was really cool. So, fun part for all this. So for the rest of this, spoilers. So this is the fun part. So in order to talk the next part I want to talk about was story. We can't talk about this story on here without spoiling anything. So if anyone is watching and you don't want it spoiled, just log off, beat it, come back, go to my YouTube, watch the video, because
join in the discussion from there after you watch it.
Yes, comment, give your thoughts, whatever. Because it's about to get wild in here, because are going to have some opinions, and I think we're going to have some opinions that differ from possibly each other, definitely the internet. So, So let me preface this spoiler section with a couple of things. There was a lot of controversy around this game before it came out for multiple reasons. Okay, we're here to review the game, our thoughts on the game, not the controversy that came out before the game. So, with that being said, we're going to focus on the story itself, what we experienced, what our thoughts were. But I do want to mention the controversy. So, for anyone that doesn't know, before the game came out, The game had been delayed a couple times. The last time or most recent time before launch was the Rona. Made it a little hard to finish everything up, so they delayed it back. Not long before the trailer and a release date and everything were announced, some large portions of the game were leaked. So, as Austin mentioned earlier, muted on social media. I was the exact same way. I'm like, nope. Find keywords, Last of Us, Naughty Dog. I don't care what it is, mute it. Well, leaks went out. People were not happy with what was shown in the leaks. In case you don't know, because the internet is a fickle place, if there is a leak for any piece of media, context matters. So don't always take what's in the leak as face value and come up with all these other stories that don't end up being true after you play the game and make your assumption of it without playing and experiencing it firsthand as part of a full experience. That being said, I experienced a leak and I was a little unhappy. I got caught with one on a comment of a YouTube video that had nothing to do with Last of Us. Someone posted a link to another video, and it was something that happens in the game constantly. Which, by the way, I knew would happen in this game. I don't know why I expected it. Just not the way it happened. So, play the game. We both played it. We both beat it. So these are our thoughts on it. Without any of that coming into play. Okay? So preface over. No more about all the controversy and everything after that. Let's talk about the story. So, starts off, just to preface this, after Last of Us 1, obviously, continuing the story of Joel and Ellie. From all the trailers and everything, we kind of knew we were going to be playing Ellie. I think, did you expect that? I know that's something I expected going into the game.
Definitely expected to play as Ellie because that was, I think, playing as Joel in the first one so long, whenever it switched over to Ellie, everybody, anyone that I talked to about it that was a, exciting point in that game. So getting to do that in this one is entirely expected, I think. So
yeah, I thought that was one of my favorite parts of the first game. So
Absolutely.
I immediately was like, they're gonna kick it off. This whole game is gonna be about Ellie.
Yeah, and now we're like expecting Ellie to be even more of a badass because she spent 5 years longer living in this world. So we're like, oh man, we're gonna be able to kick ass as Ellie now.
Yeah,
this is awesome.
Yeah. So essentially, just kind of the premise of the story here. To start it off, we find ourselves in Jackson. Years later, we re-meet Joel and Ellie. Joel's brother, some introduced into a few other characters, a couple of which come pretty vital to the game later on, and just kind of see what her life's like now, right? What Joel's life's like, what's Ellie's life like, and everything, and the experience afterwards. And then we're kind of thrown into essentially what happens, right? So, I don't want to break it down too much as far as the beginning, but what were your thoughts on? Let's just do the opening. So your experience, as you play in Jackson when you first started as Ellie, I thought it was really cool. My one big gripe about the story, and that I wish I had more time in Jackson to experience it a little bit more at the beginning. So it's not really a gripe; it's just kind of a wishful thing. I kind of wanted that Red Dead experience. You know what I mean? Like where I can go in and experience and talk to all these people. I know it's not that, but it's kind of what I half expected.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't think too much about Jackson really. Like I think I was expecting to come back to Jackson at some point to be able to probably do that.
Same.
But but if I didn't get to spend a lot of time there, like I don't think it would have hurt my feelings because I was there for the monsters and the figuring out what was going on in this thing,
And keep in mind, I'm going to be skipping a lot of this stuff because there's a lot of things. These are just overarching story points and things to kind of lead along. We can discuss it. But obviously, I don't want to get everything out of the game. We're kind of hit with a traumatic event randomly you're just thrown into playing another character. Come to find out, her name is Abby. And through this, you go off on your own. You're in search of somebody with a group of your friends. You oversee the town of Jackson, get in a scuffle with some clickers. And when it boils down to it, you're there essentially to find Joel. So
I think infected is probably a better term because they're not all clickers.
They're not all clickers.
Right?
We'll get into that here in a minute because there's some really cool ones. Correct. So they infected. So you're going up against some affected. You're essentially saved by Joel and Joel's brother, which is really cool. Because you're experiencing it from someone else's point of view, but you as a player, you know this character, right? And you're playing a character that you have no clue who she is, essentially. Just some slight information. Through that process, bad snowstorm, Joel goes missing, group goes looking after him. You end up, as a player, killing Joel fairly early in the story. So I want to get what your thoughts were when that happened. So at that point, this is the part that was spoiled for me. Which I expected to happen in this game. I expected Joel to die at some point. I didn't expect it to be this early, but so be it. What were your thoughts after playing through that experience and having a character that you played as through the game, first game, just that quickly just be gone?
Yeah, so this kind of... So I have a couple opinions about this, mainly because it's something that I would do better, but that's completely subjective and probably we'll get into that as we continue this discussion. Because it's not that it would be better, it's just maybe it would be more interesting way of telling things so that this goes back to some of it feeds off of the whole controversy part of it too, because there's like 4 different views on that, which is exhausting. But anyway, so with this singing, honestly, going into it before I even saw the trailer, I know part of the controversy was, we see Joel, right? We see Joel says, "I'm not gonna let you do this alone," and that was part of the frustration that I think that a lot of people had with it was where false advertising, because we're supposed to be playing as Joel and Ellie. They were expecting 1.0 again, right? They were expecting Last of Us 1 again all the way through this, which, honestly, before I saw that trailer, and even whenever I did see it, it didn't really register with me that Joel said that. So until the controversy happened, I rewatched the trailer and realized, oh yeah, he did say that. So what? Honestly, going into this, I almost was under the impression that Joel probably would have died of old age or something. In between then, I wasn't really expecting to play as Joel, and I wouldn't have been mad if we didn't, because I got the world of Last of Us, and I was expecting to play as Ellie, so I would have been sad if we didn't get to play as Joel, which we got to play a little bit of Joel. So just not as much as probably what we like, but dying that early in the game, I think, was definitely surprising. But as the penultimate events leading up to that, definitely you see that it's coming, because you can see reactions of people's faces. You can see, you kind of figure that's what they're looking. They're looking for someone, but you don't know who they're looking for. The group, and all this happens in a cutscene, right? The way it went out, people related it to the controversy of things that happen in The Walking Dead. So what I mean, it's a brutal way to go out and stuff like that. But it sets up the whole story, right? It sets up why the rest of the game exists, which is revenge. This whole theme is revenge, right? So
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, was it did I expect it? Not really, but I think I love breaking expectations, because if you expect everything, then it's all boring. But did I love it? I don't know. I think it was interesting storytelling. I didn't hate that Joel died, because I think it makes more for an interesting story than the hero's always living.
Yeah, I think so. I expected Joel to die in this game. I wholeheartedly expected it, because I knew this game was going to be about Ellie, and there needs to be something to push Ellie. When I saw this game coming out, I initially thought that Joel would have to die at the hands of Ellie. So essentially, my thought was, oh, Joel's probably going to get bit when they're out, and she's going to have to kill him so he doesn't turn. And it's going to turn that way because of Joel's decision to not have a cure in the first game is going to essentially come back to bite him. Get it? So, okay. That was dumb. But anyway, that's where I thought it was going. Like, there was going to have to be a decision made in something heart-wrenching that you're going to have to do that directly affected. So I wasn't quite wrong on Joel's decision affecting his fate in this game, which we'll explain here in a minute. But I didn't expect it to come that early, and I didn't expect it to come from a character that I was playing, and I had no clue who they were before. You know,
right?
We had no idea. So I thought it was an interesting story choice, and looking back on it after finishing the game, I was like, I get why they did it. Like, I get it. I personally, and we'll talk about this later, a lot of my gripes with the story is I just felt like it was a little out of order and was a lot. But that's my personal opinion. I enjoyed it every bit. I just felt like if that would have happened at the end of this game, and that was the cliffhanger for the next game, I would have bought Last of Us 3. I'd buy it anyway, but you know what I mean? Like, lead up more hype to what's going to happen, stuff like that. I felt like it was just a perfectly crafted story and thought that was 20 pieces, but the pieces were just out of order. Like, I just needed to move some around for my personal preference, you know? But yeah, I'm honestly, not the storyteller. I'm experiencing the story, so...
Right. And honestly, that's the exact opinion that I have of it, that I was going to mention later whenever we broke everything down. But, saving that for the end, and we can circle back to this or whatever if we want to. But yeah, saving that for like a little bit later in the game for like a different climax for the game, I think would be a very interesting choice, just because, for one, you don't get disappointed for it happening so early, and two, there's some suspense, and certain events leading up to that wouldn't really made any sense, so maybe there had been some changes there. But I think the whole time, like, like later on in the game, and we'll get back to this, but like later on in the game, you get to play a portion as Abby. You get to know her and her story, right? More of her story after this, and I think doing that after you get to know Abby, I think probably would change a little bit on people's views. Yeah,
for sure. I agree wholeheartedly. And well, I didn't mean to jump too far ahead, but as far as the story, spoilers to get to our thoughts, I'm going to speed run through kind of what the story is and clump it together a little bit, because what we talk about is going to break it down a little bit more. So essentially, Cronin hit it. Austin, Cronin, Tin Crow. I'm going to call him 3 different names through this. Hit it on the head where it's literally a cycle of violence, right? It's a never-ending circle. And this game literally beats you over the head with that theme through this story. Essentially, that happens. Ellie sees it. She's left alive. And the whole point of the game through the beginning there is you play as Ellie, and you are on a revenge tour. Like, you are just, I'm going to slaughter each and every one of them because of what they did. Now, there's a lot in the story. There's a lot of really, really cool scenes and experiences of her remembering back to her experiences with Joel, flashbacks, which I absolutely love. Some of my favorite parts of the game were those. But I don't think they would have been my favorite parts of the game if they hadn't killed Joel off that early. I wouldn't have had that nostalgia. So I get that. But then at some point in the game, as you're hunting, you flip back and you're going to play as Abby. So you're playing as Joel's killer, yet again, which a lot of people hated. And you're playing through her experiences, flashbacks of her, why she did what she did. And then her experiences while Ellie is hunting her. Because at some point, you start hunting Ellie. And this is where the stories start to merge together. And I thought that was a really cool thing of what they did. Kind of flipping back and forth and experiencing both sides. and sympathizing and empathizing with each of those characters. At some point, it's going to come to an epic conclusion. At the end, I'm skipping a lot of gameplay, but you need to experience it for yourself. Where at the end, there's a final battle between Abby and Ellie, you playing as Ellie. So, just getting to the details of the experience beforehand. So, they break this game up a lot between story experiences and open areas where you can go explore. So I kind of want to touch on that because for me, I love the areas where you could explore that were open. The fact that I could go do that and just kind of go and experience the world of Last of Us a little bit more. But they really broke the story for me and slowed it way down. To the point where they were very large breaks in between story beats. So I have a love-hate relationship with them. Uncharted did this. Uncharted Lost Legacy did this, where I think once or twice they did it where you have a large area and you can proceed straight through if you choose or if you find certain things, but they encourage you to go explore. What were your thoughts? Did you enjoy those, or did they break the experience of the story narrative for you?
Yeah, so they didn't really. The short of my answer is they didn't really break for me because I love that stuff anyway. Like I love exploration. I love just seeing every inch of what the world has to offer, right? So like I failed in playing Lost Legacy. I haven't made it to that yet. I've had other priorities to get to that, but I'm sure I'll circle back around and get to that at some point. But regarding Last of Us 2, which is what we're here for, so the biggest for me the most exciting part was kind of a different break of so Last of Us 1 was very linear, right? It's like, okay, you get to one side of the level to the other. This one allowed you basically it was the same thing where it's one side or the other, but you have a little bit of playroom to get to there. You can kind of carve your own path in a way to get there.
Yeah.
And then there's another depth to it to where at certain point you got to go explore an entire like almost all the first part of Seattle right before the game really takes off. Which is I honestly expected a lot more of that. I expected like 2 or 3 more times that we would be able to get on the horse and go travel and explore this large open area, and I would have loved that because the reason why it didn't break it for me was because there was a lot of games that have a lot more of that kind of exploration. I know God of War did this, a couple other games did this. Your characters sit there and have story time, or they have conversations with each other. And I don't know if you played God of War, but God of War was amazing with that because because they had like they were telling lore or something, and like the characters in Last of Us 2 did kind of something very similar until you get to a certain point, and then they told each other, "Hey, let's pause this conversation," and then they pick up the conversation whenever you're walking again. And like, so I was expecting more of that. It wasn't as much as what I was expecting after getting a taste of it the first time, which I would have loved. I didn't hate it, and I didn't miss it until like I was at the end of the game, and I was like, "Oh, we didn't get any more of that exploration." So I don't know. I liked what we got. I wasn't disappointed by it, but I would have liked more. And to answer your question, they don't really take anything away from me because it's still immersive because I get to now explore the world that they already live in. I don't live in that world; they do. So I get to see what world they're in. And the cool part about it is like you find these little things of like, oh, there's a battle that happened here. So it's kind of like more storytelling inside the world. You know what I mean? Like there's flipped over trucks. What happened here? So you can kind of piece those things together. Oh, it got ambushed. Something like that.
Yeah, and that's the part I love about those areas is that it immerses you in the world. So what I kind of wish they would have had, especially in Seattle areas where here's that area and you're spending multiple days in Seattle, in order to get to one area, you have to travel through it. So maybe I don't experience some buildings as I'm going through to do said mission, but I will on the way back. Or maybe I'll do, you know what I mean? Kind of putting the area more as a hub, I guess, than a specific level. I felt like it was almost like, here's a level, explore it. Once you leave, you're never coming back here. You know what I mean? I wish I could have gone back and experienced it through the story, I would have liked it a lot better. And I think that's why it broke it for me, because it was like I spent so much time in this one area and learning stuff about the world that I never got to experience it again. So all it did was pause my main narrative to go on all these side quests, but not side quest, like side stories, but I never get to experience anything like that again in that same area. I just wish they would have put that a little more few and far between, because it doesn't have to be different areas. It could have been the same. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So you're looking like kind of God of War did this with like the
Exactly.
And sorry to compare God of War with Last of Us, because they're not the same game, and they're both amazing games in my opinion. But yeah. So we're like, it was like a central area that you can go off. If you go off of this building, then you get to go to this area,
Yep.
and then you come back, and then you can go veer off. Yeah.
Mhm.
I can see that. That would have been kind of interesting to do.
That's
And,
what my
would have
thought would have
honestly-
been, and I think I've had positive experiences through God of War like that, and I thought it was a really good idea, because it gives you a central area that you can still go explore and revisit other things. But I mean, and not to say I hated it, because I loved it. I spent more time probably in those areas than I did the whole rest of the game, just because I'm searching for collectibles and I'm reading the stories and I'm finding a music shop and playing guitar, and it triggers a cutscene, and that's super emotional, and I couldn't imagine not having that, like, because there are people that just did not experience that part. There's a lot of things in this game that they made those open areas where you can go explore, and the only one time that there are people that aren't going to experience certain aspects, or there's a flashback, for as an example, I'm skipping around, but a flashback where you experience with Joel going through a dinosaur exhibit and a space museum, and like you walk into one of the bathrooms and it triggers a thing in the mirror where you can make faces and do all this other stuff with Joel standing in the background. Like, such a cool little thing, but like, how many people never even would go look in that bathroom? They just went to where they thought they were going, right?
Right.
This game has a lot of that, a lot of side stories and letters, and even just little triggers that, like that, where there's a mirror, I make faces, and then there's dialogue that aren't required to move forward, and they're also, you might not find them on your first playthrough,
Right. So pausing on that, on your next playthrough, apparently you can climb up the freaking the dinosaur that's in the tar pit. Did you know?
Did not know that. I just heard that listening to one of the level designers that did that level, and he was like, when I designed it and gave a rough sketch to Neil, the first thing he said was like, "Can I climb it?" And he was like, I mean, like, I guess. And I was like, hold on, you can climb the T-Rex? Like, that's so cool.
I missed it too, so I'm not gonna miss that my second playthrough for sure. I want to climb it.
Yeah, like,
I don't know why I didn't.
You can throw the hat on Joel. Didn't know that. I was throwing it on every freaking dinosaur. I never threw it on Joel. Like, you can do that. And I'm just like, man, I miss so much. Like, and I know, I mean, it encourages second playthroughs, which is really cool. A really cool thing. But I was like, dang, man, like,
it's just so the thing that I love about it is it breaks it up from all the stressfulness of outside of those flashbacks, right? Mm-hmm. They just, like, it's just a way to you get to play. You just get to play for a little bit. Just like the little guitar bits. You just get to mess around on the guitar, but like with this, you just get to play with all the gadgets that are in the museum.
Also,
stuff,
to circle back before we move forward, our opinions on the story. The guitar, how cool is it? I can tell you right now, when the PS4 first came out, and this touchpad was on here, I was like, they're going to use this for a lot of stuff. Like, this is going to be pretty dang cool. And I swear, the only thing it's been used for is a big button for a map on a game.
To bring up a map.
To bring up a map. And I'm like, there's so many cool things you can do, because it's essentially, if you remember the Vita, I loved my Vita, on the back of the Vita, it had like touch controls, which was that pad on the controller was on the back. And you could swipe and press and things like that and give extra controls. And I'm like, man, this is going to be really cool in the controller. So many developers are going to take advantage of this. PS4 is dying in like 4 months, and we just now got a game that actually uses that touchpad to the point where it's like, you want to play guitar? All right, cool. Swipe up.
Yeah.
Swipe down. It treats it just like a guitar, strumming up and strumming down. Oh, you want to tap one
absolutely.
string? Just tap it. Just tap it. You'll tap it. It's so cool.
Yeah.
So cool. Such a cool, to the point where you even have musicians, and not even musicians, but people like playing Johnny Cash songs in the game with a guitar.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's so cool. So cool. Such a cool feature.
Yeah.
Especially in something that I feel is so integral to the story. Like, you could argue it's almost centered around the guitar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Game, you know?
I mean, yeah. It's just one of those people, like, it's so cool because it's a fun mechanic for the player. But it's integral to the story, so it's kind of like required to exist.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. Like, I was just like, it means so much to the game. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and what you're doing, and you feel it emotionally because of all the flashbacks and stuff they've built up, to the point where it's a theme they carry all the way up until the final part of the game. You know, which is so cool. So cool. And I know there's a lot of details that people are probably like, they're spoiling this, but like, I have no idea what the crap they're talking about. Guys, it's a 30-hour long game of straight narrative experiences. Like, we can't go through every single chapter, or else we would just be here for 6 hours talking about this thing.
Right. But yeah, I would love to do a deep dive of that sometime.
Which we might. Maybe we'll do a YouTube series and we'll dive deeper into each individual chapter or whatever. But this isn't that. It's an overall review. So, as far as the ending, Ellie is brought, and this will kind of open it up for the whole story, so I can get your thoughts on a lot of things. Ellie's met with a choice that she's gonna go kill Abby. She gives up a lot in that to fulfill that goal in the game, and there's a lot there that we can always dive deeper into. She has a chance to do it, and she doesn't. At that moment in the game, do you feel like that benefited the narrative? Obviously, it was purposeful in the narrative, or do you think it not disgraced the narrative, but did it benefit the narrative for you, or did it seem like you just wasted your time for 30 hours for the conclusion that you as a player would think would happen doesn't? Because a lot of people are like, I just want to kill Abby because she kills Joel.
Of course they do. But so this is where they and I differ with this, and that's okay.
Time to open up the book, bud, because this is where I'm the same way. So let's get into it.
Okay, so this is where it's at, right? So this is how I feel about that. You go in, you're like, oh, I can't wait to kill this bitch, right? Like, it's frustrating. We're gonna get our revenge. But then if you think about it, it goes back to what I said. I said this before we haven't even talked about this privately. We saved it for this. Yep. I said this before at the beginning of this session that we're doing now. The game broke expectations, and what do you do whenever you get it? I'm expecting to kill Abby, right?
Yep.
And what does it do? It breaks that. It breaks that expectation, because that's what you want to do. But not only that, like, I mean, this isn't the first thing to do what you don't want it to do, kind of thing. Like, it's a cyclical thing, right? It's like, kind of like, if I can steal from Game of Thrones for a second, it's like the whole will within will thing, right? And, you know, Daenerys or whoever wanted to like break the wheel kind of thing. This is a very similar concept, kind of. It's like, if she would have killed Abby, then it would have been the same cycle, right? It would have been
the whole theme of the game.
It would have been okay.
Is a cycle of violence. Like, it can. This is this world, and they want to do they did a really good job of, throughout the game, you play as Ellie and you play as Abby. Now, to be fair, you've had a whole game to experience Ellie beforehand. So they're pulling from that and your feelings on that as well. But they do a really good job of taking each character and saying, these two characters aren't that different. Like, experience Abby. This is why Abby's doing this. This is, you know, her her reason behind it. This is how she's grown as a character as it comes to this conclusion. And they do the same thing with Ellie. So each character has experienced tremendous loss. They try to rectify that loss, and in turn just completely cycle through. You're killing off each other's friends like constantly. You're doing the same things, and I think they do a really good job of making you empathize with Abby, especially because the beginning of the game you want to hate her. Like obviously, like we love Ellie from the first game, and you want to hate her. But they do a really good job in the story of that hate eventually turns to empathy. I feel like
I think so too. I think so. Yeah, I think if you want to enjoy the game, then you will. But if you hate the game because they make you play as Joel's killer because you're so attached to Joel or whatever, then you're not going to want to be attached to Abby. And I ended up actually loving Abby's character by the end of the game because
same
for probably a lot of the same reasons, you know, that I enjoyed the rest of The Last of Us. But like, I saw where she came from. I can learn to empathize with her, and if you throw yourself in her shoes, it would be the exact same. The outcome would have been the same. Like you would have done the exact same thing, right? And there's like, and you can see her changing whenever she runs into certain characters and stuff like that. You can see like because I think, and I don't think they probably didn't delve enough into this of like. Sure, she could have went and had bloodlust in her hands and all that, but like, would it have been fulfilling at the end of the day? I think you would still just feel empty. I don't think that it would have made you feel any better. I think you still would have nightmares, or you would still like. It just wouldn't have done anything. So I can see that, and and they tried to recover it just after that. They tried to cover it up with like forgiveness part because. There was a part where the events of The Last of Us 1, spoiler alert, if you haven't played Last of Us 1, you need to leave and go play that right now. But, she couldn't forgive Joel for after she finally discovers that she could have saved the world, that her life was worth it, and he didn't want to do that, and then like, so that she couldn't forgive with that, which I don't know. I didn't fall in line with that empathy anyway, but
yeah, I wholeheartedly thought that the three main characters between the first and this game have the same story arc. I love Joel. I loved playing as Joel in the first one. Joel was not a good man. We're meant to empathize with Joel at the beginning of the game because of what happens to him, right? But then when we meet and we play as Joel, this dude's a smuggler. People don't like him. He will kill at will, regardless if his life is in danger, like, regardless of the consequences, right? And at the end of Last of Us 1, when he essentially kills everyone in the hospital and takes Ellie away and then lies to Ellie's face, he does that and kills them out of personal gain because he had a love for her that he didn't experience with his daughter because she was taken from him, right? So anyone that comes to me and is like, Joel's a hero, and he didn't deserve a death like that, I'm like, I mean, if you look at it, he's kind of a crappy dude, like up until this point.
Let's not forget that that he brought Ellie to Tommy at one point, was going to pawn her off and let Tommy do all the hard work.
Yeah, she was a package.
We wouldn't have Ellie.
Yeah, she was a package, right? Like, and all this other stuff, even to the point where of people in the game. Like you have a fellow smuggler in the first game that ends up dying. That's like, Joel, what are you like? She's a girl. Like she's a kid. We need to take care of her. And you're just like, no, it's a job. It's a delivery. Like Joel's not that great of a dude. Now in the second game, we experience, obviously Joel has had a change of heart. What he's done, to the point of when he dies and you go to his house in Jackson and there are flowers everywhere, like all over the house, right? And like cards. So Joel at that point was beloved. And you could tell Joel changed because he settled down. He was working for the good of the town. Apparently everyone loved him. Like he took care of Ellie. Like, so he had a character arc from this garbage human being that made a terrible decision that affected millions of people in this world, because now there's no cure, and became a better person. And then we move to Ellie, that has this same story arc, where essentially she's like has this gift and she's gone through a bunch of crappy stuff, but she doesn't see and realize why people around her do stuff. She's a loner, right? She doesn't understand why Joel did what he did. She doesn't understand why, you know, Dina would love her and do things, you know what I mean? Like, through the whole game, you're experiencing that. And you will do whatever it takes to get revenge on the person that hurt you, no matter who or how or who gets in your way, right? Or who you hurt. Well, you experience Abby does the same thing. So to kind of go through the story a little bit, the whole reason why Abby's looking for Joel is her dad was the doctor in Salt Lake of the Fireflies that was going to do the operation on Ellie to find a cure. Now, I do think in the story, they go a little heavy-handed on getting you to like her dad. Like, he was very much, like, the script and stuff on that, I was like, you kind of losing me a little bit, but I get why you're doing it, right? You need me to understand that this is the most genuine dude possible, so I can empathize with Abby. So I understand why they did it. Just felt like it was a little WB style writing, you know what I mean? Like Twilight style a little bit. But I get why you did it. It served a purpose. So her whole thing was revenge. I'm going to go get it out. So then it kills Joel, and here we go, you know? Like,
right.
It's showing each character has the style, or has each character has an arc that's very similar. And the whole goal of the story is to show that this world will continue to be like that until someone breaks that cycle. And I think that's why, I know it took me a while to get there, I think that's why at the end she doesn't kill her. Is to show that Abby had already gotten to that point. She let Ellie go multiple times. And now Ellie had to get to that point of like, well, okay, we're not going to get this, just go. Like, I'm going to break this cycle.
Yeah. And like, I know it, I won't delve too much into this, but that was another point that there was a gripe about, is like, oh, well, this doctor was nobody. Yeah, it wasn't nobody from Joel's perspective, but also they didn't know if they were going to make Last of Us 2. So it's like, to create Last of Us 2, you have to create a reason for all this adventure anyway. So if you have to backtrack to kind of tell another side of the story that we didn't see because we were seeing it from a single-sided perspective anyway, I don't see what the big deal is for that.
No, the only thing I did was the doctor was black in the first one.
Was he?
Little continuity, yeah, straight up black. If you go play, he's black in the game, like not the files, but like the game Wikipedia, like ethnicity is African American. Like that's the only thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I feel like I don't know. I don't know if they just didn't want like a black character to be like to come off as like they're the villain of the story, maybe, or something like that. I don't know if that's why they did. But I just thought it was funny. I don't care either way because the doctor's in the first game for 30 seconds. So, but I just thought it was funny.
Yeah. Nobody to get attached to, in my opinion. But like even in I was like, I feel bad for Abby because, you know, someone that she loved got killed, right? But like I didn't empathize with the doctor at all, really, because he wasn't there to get attached to, really, in my opinion. Yeah. But I wonder in the remastered version if it's the same character or if they like changed that, because that'd be kind of interesting if they like changed him to where he aligns more with Last of Us 2. That would be funny. Coming out, you know.
I didn't pay attention to the remastered. I'll have to go back and I'll just play that chapter just to see.
Yeah, just play that chapter just to see.
Yeah. I just thought it was funny because I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah, he's totally black, whatever. And
yeah, I can.
Then in 2, he's super white. Like he's as white as me.
Right. Well, with that continuity, I can see frustration being with that. But I mean, like, there wasn't anything planned probably past, Last of Us 1. So
I think
could they have taken another direction? Probably, but it doesn't tie into the first one. There's no other way for anyone to be connected.
I think, and I listened to, there's a podcast where Troy Baker was talking about if Neil had someone had asked him if Neil already knew what he was going to do with Last of Us 2. And he already knew what he was going to do with the DLC. So he already knew he wanted to expand a little bit on Ellie, on how she got bit. But he said he did not beforehand, going into Last of Us, be like, oh, well, this is where this overarching story is going to go. So you are correct. So per Troy Baker, he said he didn't have a clue until after he took a break, and then he went back and he started writing and saying, I have a really good idea, is apparently what he told Troy. But he hadn't fleshed any of it out, right? So it's not something he thought of until after the first one was finished and reception, then he decided on what he wanted to go. So you are correct. So from Troy Baker's mouth, off a podcast I listened to, that's what he said. So I assume you're correct. And he was just like, "This, we need a fresh story." And I bet he did the same way. I bet as he wrote 2, he probably didn't in his mind say, well, we got to do this because of 3, or we have to do this because of the next one. Like, he's writing each game individually. And I think the ending reflects that, Like, it doesn't tee up anything for the next one. It just leaves it. I do want to say,
right,
personal opinion, thought it really would have been cool to have the final fight between Ellie and Abby be a choice on whether or not you kill her or you let her live. I thought they could have done something really cool, Mass Effect style, where your choice at the end affects what your experience would be in the next game. And I assume Neil Druckmann would not be for that, because he is crafting this story and wants everyone to experience the same. Even if not, I think it really would have been cool to have the player choose what they wanted to do at the end and how they felt that. And I would have loved for them to track it and see the percentage of people that let her live or that killed her.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting thing. I think the overwhelming majority probably would have been that Abby died.
See, I thought the same thing, but then I started thinking, because afterwards, when I was kind of thinking about this, I was like, I don't know if I would have killed her, because like through the story, because I genuinely enjoyed Abby as a character more than I enjoyed Ellie in this game. Like, I just thought she was not necessarily a better written character, or better, a better playable character or anything like that. But just her story arc in this game, I thought was better. And I technically emphasized. I had empathy, I'm going to say it that way, for Abby more than I did for Ellie. Like, I just did. And I was like, I was just curious, because I think the internet has a really big problem with the vocal minority making things a little bit louder than what it actually is. So as much as Twitter and Reddit screams that I'm just going to go kill Abby, or top streamers or YouTubers doing it for clickbait, I would have loved to have seen the percentage of people that would have. I think it would have been really cool.
Yeah, that would have been a cool statistic to...
And especially with how the first one ended and how perfect it was. The ending for the first one was just so perfect. How awesome would it have been to just throw the wrench in and just be like, well, guess what now, bud? You decide. So pick the right one.
Right.
Like, I think that would have been really cool. But that's again my personal opinion. I like how they ended it. I just thought that could have been a choice. I feel like it should have been a choice.
Yeah.
But
so now that we've kind of like went through the overall arc, right?
Mhm.
So let's talk about what we kind of mentioned earlier, where if we would have played the first part of the game with Ellie, right, and when we would have paused at that epic moment about 2 hours into the game or so, and then we would have played all through Abby's story. So now we have there's an equal parallel between the two. We can empathize with both of them because we know what both of their stories are.
Mhm.
storytelling might have had to change for a little bit. And I know they rearrange things in a different, because that's how you tell stories, right? You're like, okay, well, does it work this way? Does it work this way? And then they, you put things on little post-it notes. You like put them in a certain order, and then you see what works out better. And they did it this way, and I'm okay with the result that we got. But I wonder how much more interesting if we would have got the same reaction if Joel's climax would have happened right before you go off on the final mission. If Joel's demise would have reached towards the end after you play the Abby portion of the game, and then you would go back to Ellie. That gets resolved, and then people can make their decision on, do I like Abby or do I hate Abby because of this?
It would have been interesting to see how people would have reacted to that. I think we probably would have gotten a lot of the same as what we have now. I mentioned this to you kind of off camera, but I wholeheartedly feel there was enough content or story arc here that they could have split it in 2 games. But for the sake of this argument, we'll keep it into 1 game. If it were me, I would have rather have had the game completely start with Abby. I would have enjoyed if none of the trailers had anything to do with Ellie, and it was all focused on this new character, Abby. Same world, going on at the same time, and you started with your experiences with like the wolves and stuff like that, right? So kind of where you pick up before everything happens, but you go through that. And then maybe it flashes back with experiences with her dad, and you kind of empathize with her, that the loss of her dad and things like that. And then I feel like they could have I would have restructured it a little bit where maybe you do that, skips ahead a little bit with the story with Lev. You kind of go through that, and maybe you do something, but entirely with Abby, where then halfway through the game, you're going through to Jackson, and then you kill Joel halfway through the game. So you've played through this character the whole time. You've experienced her flashbacks, stuff she's done now, even stuff in the future, and kind of work it that way. And then at that point where you kill Joel, immediately, because Ellie's in the room, immediately it goes from the perspective of Ellie, and then you pick right back up with Ellie. So she goes back to Jackson. You do all the flashbacks with Joel because she's grieving and she's thinking back to everything. And then you get pissed and you leave and you go on your revenge tour. Personally, I think that would have worked better for me from a story if I didn't know anything about this Abby character and I experienced everything about her. And I grew to not love this character, but I grew along with the character. And then I'm just like, and then you kill Joel, and it's just like a shock. We're like, hold up a second. Like, I really like this character I've been playing at the whole time, and now you're going to throw this curveball at me? Like, I just randomly run into this dude and I kill him? Like, I feel like that would have garnered a bigger reaction and more surprising one, and then just jump in as you play as Ellie, and go from there. I do feel like there was a point in the game, or if they kept it the same, it should have ended on the farm with Dina. I feel like the game could have been a little shorter and ended there. Because there's a really, really, really cool faction that you fight towards the end, the Rattlers, that I thought those were really cool.
And we didn't get
we didn't get
enough time with them.
Anything with them. You get like they have slaves and stuff and how they punish people for trying to, to escape.
Yeah.
But like we did not experience them near enough. And I think it should have ended at the farm, and game 3 should have just picked right back up, and it's experiencing the Rattlers from Abby and Ellie. And then the climax comes at the very end. That's just me.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting take. I definitely agree with the Rattlers. I've seen probably more of them. I mean, they had an interesting lifestyle.
I at first thought they might be
cannibals. I don't know. It would have been...
is what I thought at first.
Yeah.
by like the trapping and like, oh, we got another live one and all this other stuff. I thought for sure they were like cannibals, but from the looks of it and all the papers and stuff you collect, they just have like slaves, that work for them and things like that, and they punish them and almost like crucifying them like on the beach. But that was kind of creepy. But I thought we didn't, that part of the game, so post the farm, with Ellie and Dina, before you decide to leave because you can't take, the fact that you didn't kill her any longer. I felt like all of that from then on should have been a whole nother game that could have been fleshed out. Because from the time that you leave there, time jumps ahead. We don't get to experience the Rattlers at all, and I felt from that time it was a very rushed part of the game. I don't know what your thoughts are on the end. Was there a point at the game where you were like, oh, I really thought it was ending here? Because I felt that way multiple times, but really on the farm, I was like, oh, they're going to, dang it, Neil's going to leave me with another ending that I'm going to be like.
Yeah. So I honestly thought that the farm was the end. I really did. I really thought that was, whenever you sit,
mm-hmm.
you know which part I'm talking about.
On the tractor?
You just sit and
You're sitting on the tractor looking?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah.
I thought the credits were going to roll, but they didn't.
I thought so too. And I honestly, I kind of wish they had.
And then, yeah. And, but we got a little bit more out of the game. Did it feel rushed at the end? I don't think until you just now said that, I don't think I've ever thought about that, because I was like, I wasn't sure how long the Santa Barbara portion was going to be. Obviously, it wasn't
something I thought of while playing it. I'll say that. Like, it was something I thought of later looking back on the game. Because as I'm playing it, I was like, oh, well, we're not done. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I knew. So you go into that part of Santa Barbara, right? And then you see the Rattlers emblem on the wall, and I'm like, okay, well, these guys are going to show up at some point.
Yep.
Because I had seen them in a preview to the factions, but I had completely forgot about them. This is our first introduction to the Rattlers. We see them, and then or at least their emblem. And I almost wondered too, and I don't think part of me is wondering if, like, whenever she gets on the radio and she contacts the Fireflies that are supposed to be getting back together, if the Rattlers are the ones that actually.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was actually going to ask you if you thought it was the Rattlers, or if you thought it was actually Fireflies, and Fireflies are still there.
I felt like it was the Rattlers. I felt like it was the Rattlers that came and got her. But I don't know.
I think it was the Fireflies.
It wasn't. Maybe it was actually.
I think it was the Fireflies.
Yeah, I think that's what it was supposed to be, but part of me wants to think that it was. For some reason.
I think the Rattlers are probably listening in. They probably knew all that stuff was there and were listening. But I do think, personally, I think it was the Fireflies, just because they asked, where were you stationed? And then they said, who was in charge there? And then as soon as she said who was in charge, they were like, oh, yeah, okay, here's this, like, almost like they knew. Right. That's the only reason why I think it is. But yeah, I was actually going to ask you that question, which is funny. I was going to ask you that because like a lot of people have debated, like, well, are the Fireflies still exist, or are they actually, gone?
Yeah, no, I think the Fireflies are probably getting back together, or whatever, which honestly makes me wonder, like, okay, so what do we have for if they're writing Last of Us 3, what do we have? We have Abby. We potentially have Ellie. But I think Ellie. So if you think about it, right, like Joel had to die in this game because his story went full circle whenever he got Ellie at the end, right?
Yep.
Last of Us 1. So there wasn't much storytelling to Joel left anyway. Even if he did go on this adventure, he probably would have died.
All the storytelling that they needed to do happened, because in the first one he promised, I'd teach you how to swim. I promise you I'd teach you guitar, and they did that, right? And like you even get the taste of that happening. So I agree completely. His story arc had been completed.
Right. But okay, so with that said, I think before I go any further, it's kind of important to bring up this detail. The way that it ends, the way that she lets go finally of Joel, right? Wouldn't have been possible in Last of Us 2 because that was part of it, right? Because the
Mhm.
end of the farm before she goes on the revenge was the flashback, the nightmare of Joel's death.
Yeah, yeah.
And then so then Tommy comes in and says, "Hey, let's do our thing." Um, and then so she's convinced that she's gonna go do it. And then but she couldn't have let go with the flashback and anything else if she didn't let go of Abby, right? If she would have killed Abby, then none of
Right.
that would have full circle. She wouldn't the thing that became such an integral part of the story, and this is why it's an integral part of the story, is because, you know, I guess it's cool since we've been spoiling it so far, but like I mean, there's no need to have a guitar if you can't play the guitar, right?
Right.
Um so I think that as the ending kind of like that's how you know it's over is whenever she sets the guitar down and you're like, okay, it's finally done.
Yeah,
This is it.
yeah. And
But
so
I mean like
a couple things I did notice. So I read up on this, and I personally did not realize this, and I didn't notice. And I'm gonna go back and look. Someone was saying when you're in Santa Barbara as Ellie, you have Dina's bracelet on,
okay.
which would imply that there's a gap in there missing where she actually not got back with Dina, but they have met and maybe reconciled at some point, right? Because she doesn't have it on for most of the time, but she does towards the end. I don't know if that's true. I need to go back and kind of play
So
through part
when
of it,
did
but
yeah, so I'll have to pay attention to. So when did she initially give her the bracelet? Doesn't
so she gives her the bracelet
doesn't she give
in
it
the theater very early.
right, that's what I
But
was thinking. Like right at the
but
beginning. Does she
supposedly
never gives it back, right?
no, but supposedly Dina is wearing it in the farm scene. Supposedly Dina is wearing it again when they're in the farm. And then in Santa Barbara,
Interesting.
Ellie has it on.
Interesting.
Don't
I
know.
didn't
I
realize that.
need
I
I
didn't
didn't either. I need to go back and check it out. But supposedly that's kind of what some people caught up on. But I kind of feel like in the next game it could just be solely about Abby and Lev. Like I mean they could
yeah, I
easily
think yeah, and that's where I was headed before I got sidetracked. Is that I mean that's what we have is like so we've have like I mean Abby's story isn't complete because she's not with the Fireflies, which is what she's trying to get back to.
yep.
So if she gets back to the, I mean, is anyone that hates the game going to play Last of Us 3? No, but it doesn't matter because I mean I'm going to
I
just
said
because
that
of
about
it.
Last of Us 2 and it sold like gangbusters, so I don't think they're gonna have a problem with that. So
But like
people can get riled up all they want, but the game still stole a ton.
yeah, but I mean
I will
so we
say
have
I almost feel like though we have to
that
have some there's no closure with Ellie. I think
right.
that we have to have some sort of closure with Ellie, and that's the one part of the third game I don't know how they're gonna do that. Like
Okay, so obviously we can say whatever we want because Naughty Dog's not going to take our ideas because they don't do that kind of thing. So
and they're not listening either, so
so
Neil
yeah,
Druckmann, get out of chat.
okay. um so that's where we have so Ellie goes back to Jackson. They're um and they're in the Midwest, and
Mhm.
then was she going back to Seattle, or I forget where
So
was
I think
Abby
I
going?
think your
Or was
mic
LA?
came. Did your mic come unplugged or your headset?
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
yeah,
I heard it. I just want to make
yeah.
sure.
Sorry.
No, you're
Uh,
good.
no. So she went. She was going to LA, right? Because she came down to Santa Barbara, and then on the radio, where did she say she was getting ahead of? Wasn't it LA that she was going to?
I think so. It was somewhere else on the coast or
Yeah. So
something
I
like
thought
that.
she
Yeah,
was
yeah.
going to Los Angeles because I mean she wouldn't have been going back to Seattle. That didn't make sense because she was up there with the Wolves. So
Hmm.
going back down. So she's in California with Santa Barbara. So I thought she got a hold of the Los Angeles people. She
Hmm.
called like 2 or 3 numbers. I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't
But
remember all of them, but I think you're right on that. I think it is Los Angeles.
yeah, so okay, so she winds up in Los Angeles, probably rejoining the Fireflies there, on top of whoever else they come into, because Los Angeles is
Hmm.
insane. Can you imagine clickers inside Los Angeles?
Oh boy. Earthquakes
But
could happen. You know, it rained like every day while
yeah,
you're in Seattle. You could have earthquakes and buildings crumbling. Oh man, I'm getting some ideas here. There's some gameplay elements that could be wild.
yeah. I don't know. So there's no way they're gonna meet again, right? Reason the Ellie's in Midwest. They can tell two different stories again, but I don't see. So it would be interesting. They have a team up, right? So that's their new duo. Is Ellie joins up with Abby for some reason, and Last of Us 3 is about them completing their stories somehow. I don't know how this happens because they're not going to kill each other because they've saved each other multiple.
So
I feel like
Jackson's still out west. It's in Wyoming. So
okay.
Jackson, I looked it up just to make sure. So they're not too terribly far. I would assume if she traveled from Seattle and even went all the way down to Santa Barbara, Ellie did. I mean, they could. Sorry to derail you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was thinking it was obviously I don't
like Missouri. I was thinking Missouri in my head. I don't know why.
Well, no. So I knew it was. Well, I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking it was a little bit more inland than what it was, but obviously I don't even know my own country. Classic American, right? But anyway, I guess that's what happens whenever you never get out of Indiana. But
hey now, this is America. Okay, we do miles per hour. Okay, none of that kilometer crap. We don't know our own country or our own history. Okay, because our school systems suck. Leave us alone. All right, move on. That's what we're trying to get at.
So yeah. So she's not anyway. So them rejoining, I don't think we have any hopes. Maybe there is a storytelling elements where you can do that. I don't know what the hell it is, and I don't know how they join again because there's not really any reason to. They don't. There's no revenge factor for those two to join again. So I think if you're on Lev and you're on Abby, and they're joining the Fireflies, and I don't know where the story goes from that, obviously, because I'm not a writer for Naughty Dog, but
so
I don't know.
Here's my thought.
I don't know where you
Naughty Dog, you can take us to the bank. I'll take no money from this. All right, Neil. I know you're listening, Neil. I know you're listening. So, this is my idea for Last of Us 3. You ready? Nearly identical to what yours was. So, play as Abby and Lev. You're searching for the Fireflies, right? You've got your companion. You've got the element of travel. You have everything really cool open world that you could have there. And it's all traveling to find the Fireflies. How you could have closure for Ellie. Okay. Ellie's whole point was that she was upset because Joel took her decision away from her to find a cure. That he took that decision. She specifically states that.
Oh fuck! I already see it.
She knows.
I already see it.
Yeah. So we already know she went back to Salt Lake from this game. Found out that they were upset. It was the only doctor they had, right? Surely, though.
Well, I thought it was the only doctor that could make the cure. Wasn't that
that had the experience to do that? That's what they state in the game. Like, he was the only doctor that would be able to find a cure, right? Or had the experience to do so. It wouldn't shock me from a gameplay element is if part of that game is split again with Ellie, maybe less more so, of Ellie searching also to see if the Fireflies are still around. To essentially give herself up for a cure. Thought it could be there. That could be the closure that Ellie's storyline needs. But that's kind of my thought for 3 is you could have 2 different gameplay elements, your typical companion story, just like what we've had with Abby and Lev, searching for the Firefly, searching for home, and then have Ellie that's searching for some sort of redemption or meaning to her life. If she doesn't have Dina, she doesn't have Joel, maybe she tries to search for somebody that can use her for a cure. I don't know.
Okay, so who did all right, so here's my thoughts on that, right? I don't think she gives herself up, maybe, right? Let's just pause on that. Because it's effectively suicide, and there's easier ways to do that. Why do you care about anyone else at this point if you're just going to do it anyway for the good of mankind?
It could be, but like I said, she's mad Joel took the decision from her, so maybe she wants to do that and make her life matter.
But you have to know that so unless she's joining the Fireflies until they find a doctor that can convert her to do this. But let's think about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
They kept it a secret from everybody whenever they got to Jackson. Nobody knew. She told Dina because she was excited, or they were telling stories, right? Relatively early on in the game, she said, "Hey, here's a story." Dina didn't believe her, and then later on, I forget who it was because I haven't gotten a lot of sleep, but whenever they're in the elevator and the face thing, or they're in the hotel and her face cracked and they were worried, wasn't that Lev or somebody? Who was she with? It was Lev, right? Because she could breathe the spores. You remember that part?
Oh,
that was the
yeah.
only other person that she told.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that Lev?
Let's see. Dina initially.
She told Dina, and then at the end, whenever she goes to find a mask for Lev, because they were in the it was basically like ground zero or something. It was like either a hotel or the hospital or something like that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, so they're in Seattle, and it's the really deep thing. It's like the only place where you find a bloater.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who it was, because I remember
she's with the.
She was like, "How are you not turning?" No, it wasn't Lev. It was she killed her. It was the one of Abby's friends, Ness. Was that her name? She was a doctor or a medic for the Wolves. And when you go to find her at the hospital, it's in the bottom.
Nora?
Nora. That's who it is. You tell Nora, because remember you fall into that area that's that has spores, and you don't have a mask on, and you're chasing her, and she's like, "How?" And you tell her.
Yeah, that's right. So okay, so there's Nora, but I thought there was maybe you're playing as Abby or something. The part that I'm thinking of, but I thought that anyway. So here's my thought was going, and like I said, I'd have to play again because I had went through the game and I didn't like keep track of everything because I'd only been through the game once so far. I'm on my second playthrough, but how to tie your story together, how I thought it'd be interesting is Abby finds a doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lev, for some reason, I was thinking that Lev was with her whenever she knew about the mask cracking, right? Mm-hmm. Lev knows that she's immune. So then she tells the doctor and she tells Abby, "Hey, Ellie's immune." So that's how they go on a hunt to go find her again.
Well, Abby knows.
I thought that
Abby knows.
Okay.
Yeah, because remember, she knows she was at the hospital that day, and she knows it was Joe. Yeah. All of that. So
yeah. So anyway,
Abby knows
that'd be kind of interesting.
It could be, yeah. She tells a doctor, finds the fireflies. You tell the doctor, and then you go on the hunt for Ellie.
Hey, yeah.
Could be pretty cool.
And that could be full closure, but
hunting down Ellie. Who knows where she is at that point? If she went back to Jackson or what? Like,
yeah, maybe she goes somewhere else.
No, I don't know. That's a cool idea. So yeah, I mean, you can still connect the two, and I feel like I really hope that there's a closure to this story. So I hope we're not, as much as I would love to play it, just from a narrative standpoint, I don't want like Last of Us 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want a finality. And if you want to branch off and maybe you have a game like in the same world that's different, I would love that. Like Uncharted, I thought did really good. Uncharted 4 just wrapped everything up in a nice bow. And then they're like, we're going to do Lost Legacy. It has nothing to do with Nathan Drake. It's in the same world. And it's an Uncharted game, right, but it's not that story. Like, I feel like that story's finished. And Naughty Dog, don't you dare make an Uncharted 5 with Nathan Drake. I will be pissed. Like, it's just,
yeah, well, I don't think you will. I don't think you will because you go to the daughter, right? The daughter becomes...
It probably will. It probably will be the daughter. But, like, you know, there are other stories to tell, and I think it'd be really cool to have a finality to, like, what we've been playing. And maybe they grow out factions, and maybe you do a Firefly game, or, you know what I mean? Like, they could do other stuff like that, but... and have it be that, but I feel like it needs to stand on its own and be its own storyline. Like, yeah, I'm really worried too. Like the HBO series, I'm super excited to get a live action of this because I think they can make the infected just absolutely freaking terrifying, which we haven't talked about. And before we finish, I want to talk about because holy Rat King, oh man, I was terrified. Oh. So in the scene where you're down in the bottom of the hospital, right, and you experience the Rat King infected for the first time.
Yeah.
I about crap my pants. But that whole scene before you even get to him is so terrifying and so tense that when I was finished with that level, I immediately saved, turned it off, and I'm like, I need to play something lighthearted to calm my heart down, because oh my gosh, like that whole thing was just, oh, it's so good. Like, it was just so good.
Yeah, I know. It was one of my favorite parts. It was definitely terrifying. That boss battle was
I was
brutal,
like,
but
I
it
was
was
like, I need to play something mindless just to like de-stress a little bit.
yeah. Well,
Man,
I was to the point where once I saw the door was cracked open, I was like, I don't even want to go anymore. I was like, this is the end of the game for me right here. I don't even want to see what the hell that thing is.
there's blood dragging all through these doorways that are busted open, and it's like, oh, it's the only way you're gonna follow it, bud. So keep going. My God, jeez.
Yeah.
But they did a really good job. The clicker sound from the first game is still absolutely terrifying every time I hear it.
Yeah.
But the infected types, they kept the same. They didn't iterate too much on changing anything or giving you 30 different types, which I like.
Yeah.
But essentially, they reintroduced a couple, like the bloaters, the clickers, and the runners. And I believe the stalkers were in the first one for like a level, right?
Maybe I don't remember the stalkers too well. I feel like they're kind of a new thing, or maybe yeah. Well, I don't know.
I feel like we may have experienced those maybe towards the end of the game or something.
Or like an early version of them. They were like
yeah,
because
halfway intelligent, like where they'll hide and sneak up on you and stuff like that.
Yeah, not to this extent though. This was pretty good.
Multiple, like it was terrifying.
Yeah.
On parts of that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure stalkers are basically new for this one. I think the other ones, they were there. There was like two different versions. There was the ones that were kind of like dumb and they didn't know what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking The Last of Us one. They're kind of dumb, and then you had the ones that would just hunt you out, and then you had obviously the bloaters and the clickers, right? Like that was like the 4 types. But in this one, from what I remember, there's only like 1 or 2 bloaters in the entire game. And whenever you see them, it's like pretty terrifying whenever you finally get to them. But it's like, like there's not very many bloaters. There was a lot of shamblers in the game, which those things are so fucking annoying.
Jeez.
But like, and then you have obviously Rat King, which is 1 is enough. I'm so happy that we didn't have to deal with more than 1.
Then it kept splitting off and coming out. I'm just like, oh, jeez, Lord save me through this. I was so terrified through that whole thing. Then you got lights flashing red and water, and like it's so dark I can't see half of the stuff, and it was just, the environment was so good. That whole thing was terrifying. I loved every minute of it too. Like I was so stressed. My wife was like, why do you play that game when you're so stressed afterwards? I'm like, oh, it's so good though. It's like a horror movie. Like you just want to watch it because I want to feel like the adrenaline, and like this game does a really good job of getting you there. But that scene, especially with the Rat King, was, oh man, it was wild. It was a wild ride. It was the best way I could put it.
So.
But Infected, really cool. I don't have any complaints. I still to this day say that they're there slightly to terrify you, but the combat with the actual people is probably the better part of the story. I like how they don't focus on the infected in this game. They're there, and you're in this world, and you're living with it. But it's not your typical zombie game or movie where that's all you're fighting, you know?
Yeah, they're just part of the world now. You just deal with it.
You experience it, you know? Like, it's just there. So I like how they continued with that. But, yeah, I really like the infected. That Rat King was dope. so disgusting, too. But yeah, so to wrap everything up, got like 4 or 5 minutes here. We're going on 2 hours. I was thinking 40 minutes to an hour, and I'm like,
no way, man! I could totally talk more.
As soon as I was like, I need to have Cronin on here, I'm like, okay, schedule out 6 hours for this. But so we talked about this beforehand. Neither one of us like giving scores for games because they're all subjective. But I want something tangible. I don't care what you say. I'm going to give this game 6 clickers out of 5. That's how much scores matter. No, but to be real, I will say, so the title for this, I literally put, is this game a masterpiece or is it just a pile of poo? And because if you go on Metacritic, for instance, you're going to see it scored as high as a 94 by critics. I think a 94, 96, maybe somewhere in that range. And I want to say it's in like low 30s for user reviews.
Yeah.
And it changed how Metacritic works. Like Ghost of Tsushima, when it launched, definitely said, hey, we're going to give a 48-hour window where you're going to at least have to play this game, because Last of Us 2 had negative reviews like 10 minutes after those opened. It was flooded with reviews, mainly negative, but even positive reviews. So people haven't even played the dang game, like, which is super frustrating. I wish they had like, no, we need to verify your purchase or that you've played the game, through X amount of time in order to do this. I in no way, shape, or form think it's the masterpiece of all games. I think it is a phenomenal exclusive game at the top. The game is stressful for the sake of the story. So I had times where I wasn't having fun, but I wanted to continue because I needed to know what would happen, But then at the end of the game, I sat back and I'm just like, holy cow. Like, that was I think I tweeted, I was like, that was a wild ride. Like, this was just, I had a blast. I would have done some of the story different. I'd put it probably like an 8.5 out of 10. I'm not going to give it a perfect score because there are things I changed. I think the story is a little convoluted and a little long. Could have shaved a couple hours off this game and been just fine. But I don't know how people are just like, no, it's a 1 because Joel died. Why? Like,
Yeah,
bro, it's part of the story, and I hated it just as much as everybody else. But then when you get done with the game and you look back on it, you're like, I get it. I get why you did it, Like, it served its purpose to the story.
Yeah.
But that's what I'd give it. What do you got?
I mean, if we're ranking by infected, I would give it a Rat King. But if we're ranking,
a Rat King.
Yeah. Well, Rat King's interesting because he had a what was it, the one of the stalkers for like a leg that came off or something.
Yeah, had a stalker for a leg and a couple clickers on this side and a bloater inside him. I don't know.
Yeah, it was like all a bunch of fused together. Anyway, so I don't know, like as a whole package. I mean, obviously we've been critiquing it all night, but like as a whole package, I would probably give it a 9 if I had to give it.
So we're not far off. 8.5.
Yeah, I think it was.
Like, it's a good game.
I think it's a solid package. The thing is people are like, oh, it's going to lose half of the entire score just because I don't like these couple things about it, or like the story wasn't that great or whatever else. I don't think the story was bad. I just don't think it was the story that you wanted to take from it, kind of thing. And like as a story as a whole, with like how the animation, like I'm talking like technically, like the technical improvements, the mechanics, the combat, the the puzzles, the like the whole
the environments, we put it all. It's phenomenal. Like
art, yeah.
I would say it's a technical achievement. Like, we're getting ready to move into next gen games, and Last of Us 2 has set the bar extremely high for the next gen games, especially, I mean, Sony first party titles, so exclusives in general. Like, Sony has spoiled us like beyond all belief with PS4, and it's like Last of Us 2 is that little, like the little cherry on top. You know what I mean? Like, God of War was phenomenal. Spider-Man was just great. Like, loved every minute of it. Horizon Zero Dawn, fantastic game. We get Last of Us. Like, it's crazy what we're getting, and people can complain all they want. Ghost of Tsushima I have not played yet, but I will at some point.
Yeah, I'm on that same boat. I should get it soon.
Which I hear is fantastic. And then we just have games like Red Dead came out. Like, I mean, it's a shame that a game like this with such great you know, mechanics and graphics and gameplay and environments and oh jeez, a character development, even voice acting. Voice acting is incredible. I mean, the first game was phenomenal too, but like,
okay, so let's pause for a second.
man,
Like, we're talking about like technical achievements and stuff like that. Just the range of like that first part where like Joel gives Ellie the guitar, like her facial expressions. I'm still amazed at like. I mean, we have a whole segment on the mirror where you can just play with her face rig all day, but like
it's crazy.
the part there where like it was just so good, man. Just I love it, like how expressive the characters are. Like
It's incredible. Like it, and then it zooms in on Joel as he's like watching her, you know, like try this, and you feel every emotion. I can see every strand of hair on his beard that's gray and brown and everything in between, and every twitch facial pore. You see it all. It's just like,
yeah,
the game is freaking beautiful.
Yeah, man, I can't even imagine like Last of Us 3, like if this thing comes out, like it's going to be insane because not only will we have better hardware, but we're going to have, I mean, I'm sure their engine gets upgraded because of all this achievements too. Plus, we have 6 more years probably of R&D that we can do, and like just everything that we're going to get from like art. Just if you strip away everything else, the art that's going to be coming from any game that comes out of PS5 is going to be probably pretty insane. Like,
it's gonna
you know
be
what
nuts.
I mean? Like,
it's gonna be nuts.
Yeah.
And like it's just a shame that people they're upset about one aspect of it and they let it ruin their entire experience. Because I would guarantee you 90% of you that are pissed off, if you see this and you're like, I didn't buy the game, fine. I didn't play the game, you're missing out. Like, whatever your opinion is on what happened, if you experience this, like if you're a gamer in general, or just enjoy a really good, you know, story. There's so many accessibility settings. We didn't touch into that, so we don't have the time for it all. But like, accessibility settings alone are incredible that they've put in there for disabled people, for colorblind people, like for people that just want to. There's an auto aim feature on there. If I want to go through and just have someone that's never played a game in their life and just experience the story and being here, the game will help you. Like, through it, they have that. It's incredible.
That'd be great to dive in because honestly, I didn't even think about that, and I shame myself in saying that, but like I didn't even think about people who don't have the same capabilities and play the game the exact same way that I do, and to Naughty Dog to go that extent to basically cater to any sort of.
We're thinking about you too, like
person, To experience this game is amazing, and it's the first game that I've ever heard of really that not only got praised on it, but seemingly gets included in this game. Like, you know what I mean? So like I don't really think maybe there are some other games that do that, but like a big selling point to this is definitely feels like accessibility design, and it's probably a topic in its own, you know.
And I think we'll see a lot more in future games. I think it's something that we'll see quite a bit in games to come, like as far as accessibility settings and things like that, and not tying. I played through the game. I just beat it on just the standard normal mode. Typically, what I do first, but even the fact they didn't tie a trophy to difficulty, because for platinum hunt, trophy hunters that may not, beat it on the hardest difficulty or anything like that, like, or maybe the accessibility settings they need turned on prevent that. You don't have to worry about that in this game, which I think is a really cool feature. So as we're signing off, a couple things before we end. One, it is we're recording this and we're live on August 13th today. If you have this game, update came through for grounded mode, permadeath mode, all sorts of game filters, more accessibility settings. There's a setting on there that makes it look like Borderlands, which, like a comic shader, so cool looking. You could already play it in black and white. You could play it in like blood red. I mean, they've got all sorts. 8-bit.
Yeah,
You could play it in whatever.
8-bit.
Like, it's crazy.
Playing it Super Nintendo Last of Us 2 sounds amazing.
Like you could play the game in a one of the settings they have is a reverse setting, or it's flipped. So every time you die, when you respawn back in and you start the level, everything is reversed and flipped. And I just smacked my mic. But everything is
mess
flipped
with you, man.
to mess with you, right? So the whole way you thought was over here is over here now, and to kind of trick you and stuff. So to add some extra, difficulty and experiences to make your next playthrough, awesome. I've got a huge backlog of games I'm gonna try and go through, and as soon as I get through it, I can tell you right now over the holidays with some time off, I'm trying permadeath mode. Straight up, I'm gonna see.
Absolutely, me too.
I'm gonna see how far I can get before that kicks in. So
I give myself 30 minutes before I'm dead and have to start over.
Won't even give myself that. Probably one of the first combat sequences. I'm out, but yeah, we'll give it a shot. That'd be a fun stream. So
before we go, I have one last question.
Yeah.
The factions that showed up in Last of Us 2, right? If they all appear in Factions 2, who are you going to stick with?
So you're talking wolves, the rattlers, and scars, huh? A lot of it depends on the gameplay. If you have loadouts and even not abilities, but stuff that would cater towards each faction, right? I would go scars. Give me a bow. Give me a bow and whistle back and forth. I'll do that all day. But that's probably who I would go with. It's probably
me too.
Scars.
This is basically my way of tying in without making a conversation of what's your favorite faction, and we'll see you in Factions 2 whenever it comes out, because we have to have that, because it's just the experience is so good.
Oh, it's phenomenal. And I tell you right now, if anyone's tuning in on stream or on the video later, I'll link Twitch below, because I'll be streaming that constantly if Factions comes out. We'll be playing that heavily with the old crew from Last of Us 1 Factions. We might even play some Last of Us 1 Factions here soon. We might just have to do that,
Man.
We'll just dive back into it, just the olden days, and we'll see how good it is, or how good we are. We tried it not too long ago, and it was bad.
Just don't forget about the guys that haven't. Don't forget about the guys that haven't stopped playing since.
Yeah, level 999s. Yeah, all of those in our level 50s. I was a pretty high level on PS3, and then it erased when I got a PS4, but that's all right. But all right, well, I'll link stuff. If you're watching this on YouTube, throw in your comments what you think, what you liked, what you didn't like. Put in if you
disagree
or
agree.
Yeah, I'll try and comment with you. Keep an eye out on the channel too. So we kind of teased this a little bit earlier. Hopefully by the beginning of the year, we will have a channel started up for more of these, some long form content, some top 10s. So keep an eye out for that. I'm sure we'll talk more about it as it gets closer, but should be a good time. So keep an eye out for that. Cronin, you do a lot of Austin here does a lot of visual work, some animation, some just a sheer artiste. Where can they go to check out some of your work?
Not good at advertising myself, my only downfall. You can follow me on TenCrow across all social medias. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, stuff like that. And pretty soon I'm getting better at posting my work. So I'll have it up there on those. I'm holding myself to it now. It's
cool.
On record.
It's on record now, so now you're gonna have to. So, and we'll have TenCrow on quite a bit for these two, and hopefully a few other of us. So we'll have hopefully between 2 and 4 of us, we can have some conversations over different games, reviews that we've played and beat. We might even do some of this for some news and things that we hear and want to talk about. So, but yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone. That if you stuck around through all the spoilers, if you beat the game, let us know what your thoughts are. I'll have this VOD up on my YouTube, so check out the link in my Twitch about page. On the front there should be a link straight to it. It'll probably be up by this weekend, and we'd love to hear comments and things on there, whether you agreed with us, disagreed, if you caught something that we didn't catch through the game and thought that was really cool, or even what you think Last of Us 3 might be. It'd be cool to hear what everyone thinks might happen in the story. So we appreciate y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Cronin, Tin Crow, thanks for stopping in. We'll do this again sometimes. All right. Well, we'll catch y'all later.
See ya.